A few weeks ago, I talked about the different types of recession, some of the lead indicators that you might want to keep an eye out for, because even though Australia hasn't had a recession for a generation, there is one coming, it will be here inevitably, and the best business leaders are the ones who are prepared and ready to respond. I promised in that video to talk through some of the different ways to plan and to respond to a recession. Now, ultimately, the response you need will depend on your business and exactly what type of economic circumstances are going on, which type of those three recessions you endure. But it's important to understand the common reaction that people have, even CEOs, experienced business leaders, when a recession arrives. And if you can fight against some of that common reaction, if you can act in a counter-cyclical nature when you respond with your business, then your business will respond better and may even come out ahead as a result of that recession. There are 5 key rules, most common mistakes and opportunities in a recession. I'm going to walk through each of these very, very briefly. The first is around timing. If you think of the economic cycle as having 4 phases, there's a downturn, a drag at the bottom where people are unsure, there's a release where the confidence comes back into the market, and then there's the ultimate upswing all the way up to the boom at the top. Most CEOs are implementing business strategies that are one phase behind where the economic cycle is and where their business needs to be. So during a downturn, they're often still implementing the boom time strategies, the things that worked when the going was good, and those things are not going to work when circumstances change. This is why I often say it's important to have a recession plan, not a big detailed thing, but just a plan that sits in your bottom drawer or in your strategy file on your computer so that you can pull that out when circumstances change and respond faster. So be where the market is, where it's heading, not one step behind. The second, and you might want to watch Blackboard Fridays episode 13, where we talk about risk profile in more detail. And in that, I encourage you, especially if you have business partners, to set a risk profile for the business. For example, 7 out of 10. What happens during a boom is that naturally our risk appetite increases. It's why everybody flooded into Bitcoin in 2017, because it felt like it was going to go up forever, so we threw caution to the wind and took a risk. When a recession occurs, the opposite takes place. Our risk appetite will often decline. And so you can find yourself as a business leader bouncing back and forth between a higher risk and a lower risk, which means you lack consistent leadership. Now, while things are still going strongly, is a great time, if you haven't already, to work out what that risk profile is for your business and to stick to that. If there's a boom coming in your industry, don't take unnecessary risks that don't match the business. And similarly, when that next recession arrives, don't pull back, scale back, wimp out just because of your fear. Understand that what is risky, what is a 7 out of 10 in a recession may differ, but stick to that objective. Winding up and unwinding. This is a common mistake I saw a lot when I worked with businesses in the UK during the global financial crisis, the Great Recession. Is that naturally, if we think of that green line as revenue and the red as costs, what can happen is during a recession, our revenue plateaus or declines, but our costs are still there, including a lot of our fixed overhead, staff, premises. The natural tendency that I see is for business owners to wind back the costs just to meet that revenue, to bring back to break even. Having to sack staff sucks. I've done it myself, and I've worked with clients who've had to do it on a large scale. It is a terrible experience, one that I recommend every business owner go through because boy does it motivate you. And so I can understand why business owners only want to pull it back to break even and not further. That's a common mistake, because what you need in the business, what you need to be investing in during a recession is that future growth. And you can only do that if you have free cash. If you only bring the business back to break even, then your cash reserves are going to dwindle and you are not going to be there and ready for an opportunity which will come a-knocking, even if it's just at that next release point. You need to unwind further. You need to create that buffer for investment in your business, because if you keep investing, then you will come out faster and stronger. Fourth of 5, and a very, very simple one to understand, but again, one of those emotional reactions that we have that leads to an inappropriate response. How big are you thinking? I've heard it said that the entrepreneur is a microbiologist and an astrophysicist. You've got to look at the big picture and you've got to understand the nuances of exactly what's happening on the ground. In boom time, we naturally think big. We take more risks and we think big. During a recession, we pull ourselves back to micro and we're trying to work out how we can save 6p each on pencils. Counter-cyclical means you've got to do the opposite. So during a boom time, make sure you're still keeping an eye in your business on some of those small things. Don't let fat grow into your business. That will set you up better for the recession ahead. And when that does occur, when there is a downturn, keep thinking big. Keep your eye on the bigger picture and what you need to be doing and investing in today to keep the business getting there. These are just cycles. They will pick up again. You will pick up if you've continued to invest and look ahead. And finally, the last thing is understanding that different sectors, different industries, different businesses go through different economic cycles. Australia, that hasn't had a recession since the early 90s, is a very, very different case study from something like the US or the UK. And I say, with the frowny faces here, spare a thought for all of Australia's insolvency lawyers who've had to struggle and endure an entire generation without a good wipeout to fill up their coffers. It's a little bit of a joke and no one should really feel sorry for lawyers, but different industries, as told by the insolvency lawyers, will go through different cycles, and what's a recession and a bust for some may actually be a boom time for others. Similarly, understand your business life cycle, because where you are in that life cycle, while impacted by the economy, will determine how you respond differently to a similar business down the road. All of these ultimately rest on one key point, and that is that your business is different, is special, is unique. Don't bury your head in the sand and think that the economic cycle won't impact you. And understand that you have the opportunity to think counter-cyclical, to not buy into the fear-mongering, and to respond with intent to get continued outcomes that you want to achieve, even though there might be a recession.